Moneyed, Rethinking Our Relationship. Now, there are 4 words that when you are in a relationship for a little bit of time that are said that if you're the one saying them, you're saying them because you're looking for clarity. You want to get some definition. In fact, it's called the define the relationship question, right? Or statement. But if you're on the receiving end, it's one of those statements that you go, uh-oh, I'm not quite so sure. Here's the statement that can bring fear or clarity to a situation. We need to talk, right? Which again, if you've been on and you weren't prepared to talk, you're like, no, I think we're good. I don't think, because I'm not sure what to talk is. Talk mean like we're done and over. What's it gonna mean, right? And so we hear those words and we're like, because we haven't really maybe thought about it or don't really want to think about it. We're kind of, I'm good the way it is, right? But we need to talk. We need to define the relationship. What is this, right? Are we just kind of hanging out, just having fun? Is this serious? Is this going someplace? Or is this just all there is to it? And it's one of those important moments in a relationship because it does help you get clarity for everybody's sake, right? To know what each of you are in this for. So we thought we ought to talk about a relationship that is a part of all of our lives, money. Because the reality is for a lot of us, money is stressful, right? Am I gonna have enough, right? And not only will I have enough at the end of the month, will I have enough, when my kids, go off to school or go off to college or, when the furnace blows up, when the car breaks down, will I have it, right? We get really stressed over it. And right now, with everything that's going on in our new administration, there's some really worry about money, right? Because I know people that are getting laid off and will be getting laid off from their jobs in the next week or two. And money becomes even more stressful, right? Because now it's like, it's no longer coming in, but it's still going out. And the crazy thing is, money's made more stressful if we have a complicated relationship with it. And some of us, let's be honest, we have some really complicated relationships with our money, right? We don't we don't want to think about it. We just want to make sure that there's enough to pay the bills at the end of the month, and we don't know where it all goes. And for some of us, it's like we don't have a great relationship with it, but it kind of seems to work, right? Because at least we're still here. But it has such a big impact. In fact, I saw a great definition of why this is so important. A healthy relationship with money is one where we feel in control of our finances and can use money to improve our life. That's a healthy relationship where we're the one feeling like we're in control, not like the money's got the control of things, right? In fact, he goes on to say it's characterized by financial security, not stress or anxiety. And wouldn't that be a great place to get in our money, right? So maybe that's the reason why we need to talk is to hopefully get us that space. Because I don't want anything more for any of you than to be able to have a healthy relationship with your money. To be able to have security, to not have the stress and anxiety that all of us at times experience with it because there's some uncontrolled things. But as we just got done singing, we have a Father who's in control, has everything at his disposal, right? And he will provide us. Some of us have stories about in those moments when it's things like, I'm not sure he's gonna provide. He has come through and provided. That there's always a way. And here's something I've discovered over the years in doing lots of premarital counseling, a little bit of marital counseling. I don't do a lot of it because I'm not really good at it, but the premarital one I can handle. And it's simply this, that money means something different to each of us. And it took me a while in my own relationship, both with money and with my wife, Lori, to figure this out because it took me a number of years to figure out that for me personally, money is about security. I grew up in a family that wasn't, was kind of middle class, but it wasn't like we had a lot of stuff. And I knew there was a moment that something had changed for my parents. Somebody got a raise because we had a Christmas that my brother and I got up early because what else are you gonna do on Christmas Day, right? And we went into the living room where we had all the presents, and it was like the whole room was filled with gifts. And that had never happened before or since in my life, by the way. And it was like, wow, right? And so it was just, my folks were always, pretty careful about how they spent their money, and that rubs off because what happens is kids pick up things from their parents, right? And it begins to impact how they think about things, and how you think about money, how I think about money is dramatically impacted by the homes in which we were raised in. So if you're a parent, welcome for that extra weight on your shoulders, right? But it means something different. And so for me, it meant security. And so here's how it worked. Laura and I first got married. We moved to Las Vegas. That's where my first job was at. And I went from getting paid twice a month to getting paid once a month, which if you haven't had that switch, it is a wonderful experience to have in life. Because every 2 weeks, it's like, if you run out, you can only run out for a couple of days. But in a month, it was like always the last week of a month was like the worst, right? Because it's like we don't have any more money for groceries, for gas. You'd open the cupboards and you got Cheerios and beans, and it's like not a lot you can do with Cheerios and beans, right? And it was just, and so money meaning security, I needed to make sure that my money was, safe and secure, and it was getting spent wisely. So we did the whole put cash in envelopes. This is how much we have for groceries this month. That I know some of you probably did that, right, at some stage. It's this plan. This is how much money we have, and if we don't have enough money, you got to figure out a better way, right? And you kind of learn from that. So I'd have it where, Lori would, here's $80 to go buy groceries or $40 to go buy groceries, and she'd go out and she'd come back, and I'd say, okay, give me the receipt and give me the change. Bad idea, guys, but that's that was where I was at in the moment, because for me it was like I hated that feeling that last week of every month. Every month reminded me of my fear and challenged what money meant to me. And so it got to be the place where at some point I recognized this is not healthy for lots of different reasons, right? And so thankfully I kind of adjusted and Lori adjusted, and we've kind of come to an agreement on how we kind of look at money, how we spend money, how we handle it, and have a much healthier relationship, both as people and in relationship to our money. Because the reality is how we feel about money directly affects how we manage and deal with it. If we feel like money is like, woo, money is to have fun, you will have lots of fun, but you won't have lots of fun for a long time, right? But it really impacts us. And the reality is we all have a relationship with money. In fact, if I was to ask you to come up and sit in the seat right next to me and ask you this question, I just want you to think for a moment how you would answer it. How would you define your relationship with it? Is it a good relationship? Is it a bad? Is it healthy? Is it toxic? Right? Is it like something you don't like to talk about? Is it something you don't want to have that we need to have a discussion about because you really don't want to figure it out because you're kind of afraid of it all? But I think it's important for us to think about money and our relationship to it, because it really does impact so much about our lives. So before we start this message series off today, I invite you to bow your heads and let's pray one more time together, right? Lord, in this moment, I just want to pray about those words that we sang just a couple of minutes ago. That how you have everything, right? And how you've reminded us, Jesus, about looking at the birds, right? How they don't seem to have long-term plans other than making sure they got a nest for themselves and for their family. But that each day they find what they need. And for us, that's a scary way to live. In fact, some of us would say that's not even a healthy way to live. But it is a reminder of how much you want us to trust you. How much you want us to put our faith in you. How much we want us to believe in you. That you really are good and that you really will see us through those moments when it doesn't look so great. So today my prayer is simple. I just pray that maybe you would stir some stuff up in our own lives and our relationship with our money. And maybe to help us begin to define it a little clearer, a little better, so that we can be better not only with it, but better because of it. And if you can get us started that way today, or even a long ways today, this will have been time well spent. In your name, amen. Now, if you've been around a place for this for a long time, you've probably heard somebody like me say some statement like, Jesus talked about money more than almost anything else he talked about. He talked about it more than heaven or hell. He talked about it more than all the stuff that we kind of think is important. Jesus talked an awful lot about money. And as I was thinking about this week, I thought, why, right? Why was money so important that Jesus spent so much time talking about it? And that should be your question if you knew that Jesus talked so much about money. Why would Jesus talk so much about money? And then the follow-up ought to be, what if Jesus was after something? And here's the good news. It isn't our money, right? So you can kind of relax a second. Jesus wasn't after our money. In fact, if you look at the times Jesus hardly ever asked for money. The only occasion I can think of one time when he asked for somebody to give him a coin so he could use it as an illustration. And it seems like at the end he gave the coin back. It wasn't like, hey, now I got a coin. But it was like, it's the only time that Jesus asked for money. So clearly he wasn't after the money, but he was after something. And I think it's because money Money can add meaning to our life, right? Because that's why we all want some money, is to have some more meaning, right? To have some more stuff that we can like enjoy, some, go on vacations, have some memories, have all those kinds of pieces. That money can add meaning to our life, but it's not the meaning of life, which is something that we all haven't figured out. Because it seems like, if money adds meaning to life, the more money would mean more life, right? It would give us more meaning in life, but it's not the meaning of life. In fact, if you've known anybody who's made it the meaning of their life, you know how unhappy they can be at times, how frustrated they can be, because it doesn't ever seem like enough is enough, right? In fact, money, it's a better means than an end, even though we kind of think, no, it's kind of the end, right? Because it'll provide me with a great end. So let's look at a story. We're going to look at a story that Jesus told, one of his parables, one of his made-up stories to teach a point, right? And the context is Jesus has been talking to this big crowd. In fact, it's found in the Gospel of Luke, the story of Jesus' life that Luke records. And Luke wasn't there. He was a guy who was a researcher. He kind of, heard about Jesus, heard stories, would begin and went and talked to people, got their stories, and he put them together in sort of a chronological, orderly fashion, and became so valuable that the early church, began to copy it very meticulously and, kept it around, kept sharing it until ultimately it was combined with some other documents, letters, and other stories about Jesus' life and some other things, and ultimately became the part of the Bible we call the New Testament. And so Luke has a lot of these parables, these made up stories that Jesus made up to teach a point that the other writers don't have. It doesn't mean they didn't hear them. It just means like you can only put so much in write so much down. And so they chose not to write these down. But he brings them up. In this case, Jesus has just got done finishing with sort of one of his more famous parables where he's talking to not only the crowd who are part of his followers that follow him everywhere now, not just his closest 12 disciples, but other groups have gotten bigger about this point. And there's two other groups that are part of there. There's the Pharisees, devoutly religious people who were always keeping an eye on Jesus because they didn't like what Jesus was doing, and so they're looking to a way to catch him in something. And on the other side were the sinners and even some tax collectors, right? And so Jesus has these great parables, these great stories he makes up about, imagine, losing the lamb. What would you do? Imagine losing a coin in your house, a really valuable coin. What would you do, right? You tear your whole house up looking for it. Well, imagine if you had a son who left home, right? Left home because he was mad at you. What would you do in that case? And it's after that Jesus apparently kind of talks directly just to those that have been following him for a while. And here's the story he says. He says, once there was a rich man who had a manager to take care of his business. Once upon a time, there was a rich guy who was so rich that he had to actually hire somebody to help manage all of his rich stuff, right? To take care of his business, to watch things, to keep the stuff going. That's how rich this guy was. He was so rich that he had to hire somebody to manage his stuff. And this manager was accused of cheating him, of squandering his assets, of kind of skimming some stuff, of using it for himself. And so this story gets to the rich guy. And so the rich guy calls in the manager and he says to him, hey, what's this I hear about you, right? I'm hearing stuff. What is this to it? In fact, I want you to give me an accounting of what you have done with my money. It's time to own up. It's time to bring in the records, bring in the books, and show me how you've handled my money. Give an accounting. I want to see an accounting of your management because I'm hearing stuff. And oh, by the way, there's a reason, because you can't be my manager any longer. Which for us, it seems weird. You want to get that stuff before you tell them they're fired, right? Not like after. You want to give them a chance to explain themselves. But apparently, the rich guy knew this guy was doing some stuff that he shouldn't be doing. So it's over. But before you leave, you got to give an accounting. To which I think everybody who's listening to this goes, that cannot be good because, what's the guy going to do? In fact, in the story, Jesus says, the manager thinks to himself this. He says, what will I do since my master is about to fire me? I'm kind of caught off guard, wasn't expecting this, right? What am I going to do, right? He begins to try to think, what can I do? And oh, by the way, I'm not strong enough to dig ditches, right? I'm kind of an inside guy, not kind of an outside guy. I'm not strong enough to dig ditches, and I'm ashamed to beg. I got my pride, right? So I don't want to be digging. I don't want to be begging. So what am I going to do? And so the guy in Jesus' story, he finds himself with a limited amount of time and an opportunity to figure out what he's going to do in this short period of time, right? But Jesus says, as the guy's trying to figure out what he's going to do, a little light bulb goes off, right? He gets this idea and he says, I know what I'll do so that when I lose my job, people will welcome me into their homes, right? I know what I'll do that'll make this really good relationship so that people, when they see me, will be glad to see me, not like stay away from him because we heard he was cheating, his boss, but they'll be like, hey, it's good to see you, buddy, right? How you been, right? Come on in, hang out for a while. So the manager called in everyone who owed the master any money, which we imagine had to be a whole lot of people, right? Because he's going to give an accounting to his bosses, so he's got to get the records straight. So he calls in everybody that he's had dealings with. And he asks the first guy, how much do you owe my master? To which the guy says, I owe him 800 gallons of olive oil, which is a lot of olive oil, right? And so the manager quickly says, hey, here's what we're going to do. Take your bill, sit down quickly, and write 400 gallons. I want you to take it. You write that, you change the bill so it won't look like it's in my hand. You change the bill. This is how much you owe him. To which I think the guy, as he writes it down, thinks, well, hey, that's a great discount. He maybe he hasn't heard the story that he's getting fired yet. So it's like, hey, you're giving me a discount? That's great, right? If you ever need anything, let me know. To which the guy's thinking, maybe sooner than you think, right? Then the manager asks another one. He says, hey, how much do you owe, right? And it sounds like, according to Jesus' ideas, this goes on and on. This guy says, well, I owe 1,000 bushels of wheat, which again is a big number, right? So then the manager says to him, well, take your bill and write 800 bushels. Now you may be thinking, why did this guy not get as big a discount? I don't know. It's Jesus making up the story. You need to ask Jesus, right? So, the guy writes down the stuff. Man, thank you. This is great. This is a nice discount, right? And again, hey, if I could ever do anything for you, and these guys like, yeah, I'll keep that in mind, right? And so as Jesus gets to this point in the story, everybody's kind of leaning in because they want to know how the boss is going to react. What's the boss going to do when not only has he heard stories from before that this guy was messing with this stuff, but now that he's actually, going to have records of him seeing the stuff crossed out, because they're not erasing stuff, they're just crossing out, writing the number, and he's taking it that. And what Jesus says next caught everybody back then, and if this is your first time here, will catch you by surprise. Now, those of you that heard it before are like, yeah, I know what's coming, Mike. So at least act a little surprised for me, right? So the master, the rich guy, he praises the dishonest, the unrighteous manager, and here's what he praised him for being clever and shrewd. And when he comes in with the big accounting, right, and he begins to go over the records, and he sees all this stuff crossed out and these other numbers written down, he's like, maybe he smiles at it, maybe it's like, man, I got to give you credit, right? I got to give you credit because of you were shrewd, you were clever on how you handled it, because you were still in control of my stuff, right? So you were still within your means to do this stuff. I give you credit. Which I know you may be thinking, why would Jesus make up a story where the bad guy, clearly the bad guy, right, gets commended by the rich guy? And what if he was commended because he took full advantage of his limited time and limited opportunity? And what if there's something in that whole idea of taking advantage of limited time and limited opportunity that we ought to maybe think about? See, because while he couldn't stop from losing his job, he could prepare for life after his job. He had this limited time and limited opportunity to do something to set himself up for what was going to come next. And he had to scramble, he had to go quick, and the boss is like, man, I got to give you credit. You kind of made this work for yourself really well. But then Jesus now that's the end of this made up story. Now Jesus begins with the application, right? He's again talking specifically to his followers. And he says to them, listen, here's what you need to understand. The people of this world, the children of this age, literally, are more clever, they're more shrewd with their own contemporaries than spiritual people, the children of light, are. Which we may be thinking, what is that? What's he talking about, right? But Jesus is saying, hey, here's the lesson, right? The people of this world, the children, the people who aren't religious is who he's talking about. The people who, the YOLO people. You only live once, and so, hey, go all out, get everything you can, make it all about you. Those people are actually smarter. They're more clever. They're more shrewd than the children of light, the spiritual people, the religious people. And some of you who aren't religious, who are maybe kind of becoming a little more religious now, there was a time when you looked at religious people as really naive. And you know what? Jesus would agree with you. Because some of us, can be around this kind of places like this for long enough that we begin to get a little naive about how things work. Not as sharp, not as clever. And Jesus is saying that's not a good thing. In fact, he says, the people of this world are more clever. They're more shrewd with how they interact with each other than are the religious people, the spiritual people are. So Jesus says, let me tell you the whole point of this, right? The point is this. Make friends for yourselves using worldly riches, which may be thinking what other kind of riches there are, right? But Jesus says, make friends for yourself using the wealth you have so that when those riches are gone, when they fail, when they run out, because they will run out, right? They will fail. You will be welcomed in eternal dwellings. Which is often at this point we think, he has completely lost me, right? Using worldly wealth to get friends so that when it's all gone, we get eternal dwellings. What is this all talking about? I don't think we ought to miss the point that Jesus was trying to make in this made-up story. He simply is to remind us that he took full advantage of his limited time and his limited opportunity. He took advantage of the time that he had and the moment he had to make some decisions about what was going to happen after all he had wasn't there any longer. See, the great thing about this guy is that he figured out money is a means to an end. He was using the money so that later he could see these guys, hey, how you doing? Great, and be welcomed to their home, have a great meal with them, maybe talk some other business opportunities. He recognized it as a tool to be used for more than. That money wasn't the end of itself. Money was providing some opportunities for a better end to ourselves. Which makes us all feel just a little bit uncomfortable, right? Because it's like, I've been around places like this, Mike, I've heard that money's the root of all evil, that money's bad. And some of us come to view that money's bad. And so we got to, some of us believe that we ought to get rid of it as quick as we can. And so we just, spend it because it's like money's supposed to be bad for us, right? But money's not bad. Money's just this amoral thing. It's what we do with it, whether it's good or bad. And what if there's something we can do with our temporary wealth during our limited time that can impact our future? What if that's true? What if the point that Jesus is saying, hey, use it so that when it's all done, you kind of end up in a better spot? What if that's true? What if our money, our stuff is a means and not an end? Not just something for us to enjoy, but for us to use in a smart way. A means to an end that goes beyond us and beyond our lives. It may be a little bit of a scary question. What if it already has? And what if we've already done that and we're maybe not even aware that we've done that? And actually that's good news for a lot of us sitting in this space, because I want to tell you for just a moment a tale of two buildings. Some of you have been attending New Hope for, quite a while. Some of you a long time, right? Some of you you're born and raised here, and this has been your only church you've ever had your whole life. And you know that if you've been around New Hope, we've been building a building over there for like 7 years now. We haven't actually been building it for 7 years, but like trying to get it done, right? We finally got, we're able to get some ground broken and start the process, and now we're really close to finishing. We just got flooring put in this week. We gotta wait for some glass that's being custom made for us that won't be ready for another 3 weeks, and then we gotta finish some other stuff up, and then we gotta get the final occupancy stuff off. So hopefully March sometime. But here's the thing, that at the end of this last year, we raised money. In fact, you helped us raise more than we were shooting for, which again, I give you a lot of credit for. We had a $100,000 goal, we raised $145,000. And I want you to know that if you gave money, either this last Hope for the Holidays offering or in previous times when we raised money for that building, if we've given, everything that happens in and through them is a part of a story. If you've ever given to our local budget, right? The stuff that literally funds everything that happens in and through and around this building. The whole stories of things that happen in these two buildings are now your story. So that means when somebody comes to a place like this and begins to connect with God for the first time, or maybe reconnect with God, when somebody, it takes an important faith step in their faith journey, when somebody is baptized like Camille was last week, or like some other folks will be in the next few coming weeks, whenever those things happen, here's the great thing. Their stories are now our stories. They're your stories. Because you helped make that space, because you helped put some money towards that space. And so everything that now happens in that space, you get to own. You get to be a part of, because you are a part of it. This is actually good news, right? I told you, what if we've already done this, right? And you thought, oh, Mike, what do you mean? I think back to some stuff, the way I spent money when I was young. I hope I haven't already done, too much, right? No. You've already done some good, and I hope you continue to do good. Because it's a great thing to be part of something that's much bigger than ourselves, that maybe we feel like we don't have a part in, but we do have a part in, because we've helped give some funds to, support other people in doing those things, right? And one of the things we try to regularly remind folks, those that are serving, is there are no unimportant jobs. Everything's really important now, right? In fact, right now, as you're listening or watching me, there are people behind the scenes who are volunteering, that are, videoing this, that are, making sure my voice doesn't sound too bad, right? And you haven't turned around and looked at them because everything's going smoothly, right? Even though they're unseen, right? When somebody greeted you today, right? Somebody can say, well, they're just somebody there to open the door and say hi and give me this program, right? But that's important. The program gives you some information that maybe you'll take, an opportunity that's mentioned there, and take that opportunity and take a step towards something. Those that are taking care of your kids right now, if you have kids, right? I'm so thankful for those volunteers, right? And they're taking care of them not just to, occupy some time. They're there because they care about your kids. They love your kids. And they want them to know that God loves them as well. The people that help set up things during the weeks, and the people that help tear down stuff later. The people that produce things and do stuff that some of us don't even know about that is going on. All of those things get to be part of our story if we've given to support what those things are. Now, if you think right now Mike's going to ask for a big offering, you are wrong. So just relax, right? I'm not going to ask you, to now step up and to tell you, if you haven't, you need to, so that can be part of your story. Even though that's true, that's not the point of all this. Because Jesus didn't finish there. There was more to Jesus' explanation. He's done with a made-up story, but now he's doing some application. And the next point he makes is all about how trustful people are. Here's what he said. He said, whoever can be trusted, whoever is faithful with a little can also be trusted, is also faithful with a lot, right? Which makes perfect sense. You don't even have to be religious to know this works out, right? If you got somebody and they're doing a really good job with a little bit, you think, hey, I can trust them with more because they've been really good with a little bit, right? But Jesus also flips it. He gives us a positive, but he also gives us a negative. He says, oh, by the way, and whoever is dishonest, unjust with just a little, they're going to be dishonest. They're going to be unjust with a lot, right? And again, it's just an observation of how life works. Because people, if they're like, not taking good care of something that seems sort of unimportant, right? That it's probably going to be true when they get something nicer. Even though we tell ourselves, when I get something nicer, I'll take so much better care of it. And then Jesus drives it home. He says, listen, if you cannot be trusted, if you have not been faithful with worldly riches, with unrighteous mammon, right? This stuff that's just out there, that's this means to end. If you cannot be trusted with those things, who will trust you with true riches? And Jesus is making a simple argument. If you can't be trusted with this stuff, who would trust you with some grander stuff, right? Would that be a wise thing to do? And if you cannot be trusted, you have not been faithful with the things that belong to someone else, who will give you things of your own? I don't want you to miss that Jesus just slipped in an idea that's easy to zip right by. Because if we can't be trusted with things that belong to someone else, which ought to make us think, whose stuff is it then, right? Because I thought it was my stuff. But Jesus is making a really important point. If you can't be trusted with stuff that belongs to someone else, why would you give somebody something of their own if they can't take good care of somebody else's stuff? See, what if what we have and how we use it is a test? And not like one of those midterm tests that some of you just got done with or getting ready to take, right? Not to kind of cram it all in and spit it all out and be done with it so you can just get a grade, right? But this is more like a long-term test, right? A long-term, observation of how we live lives, the choices we make, the things we do with the stuff that we have, that we at times think is ours, but maybe isn't ours. How do we do in this life? What if what we have and how we use it is a test? And what if it really isn't ours to begin with? Now, if you're not a religious person, I know that doesn't make sense to you, because it doesn't even make sense to some of us who consider ourselves religious, right? Because we would say, Mike, we own it, right? I got the paperwork that shows I own it. Well, I say I own my house. It's not really but I'm paying every month. At some point, I'll own it, right? After 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years, after I keep refinancing, it just keeps kicking it down the path. But at some point, I'll be there, right? But we own it. We worked for it, right? I worked for it, so this is how it works. I worked for it, so it has to be mine. It's our stuff. Some of us feel that way, right? Because it's our stuff, because, again, nobody gave it to us. We worked for it. We pushed for it. We stressed for it. But what if, like the guy in the story, we're managers, not owners? And if that's true, if we're managers, not owners, who are we managing it for? Something worth thinking about. Because the reality is, which is what we're going to do over the next few weeks.